All right, today we're going to tackle one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most misunderstood tools in all of economics, the tariff. Think of it like an invisible wall that can save a company, reshape an entire industry, or, accidentally plunge the entire world into chaos. So let's dive in.
So what is it really? Well, on the surface, it's just a tax on imported goods. Simple enough, but that definition, it doesn't even begin to capture the powerful, often disruptive force it can be. To really get it, we need some better pictures in our heads.
Okay, picture this. Your country's industry is like an athlete training for the Olympics. A tariff is like strapping a weighted vest on that athlete. The idea, right, is to make your domestic muscles work harder, to get stronger by adding this artificial resistance to foreign competition. But here's the catch. If that vest is way too heavy, or you leave it on forever, you don't get stronger, you just collapse.
Or how about this one? This one's all about inflation. Think of the water's surface as the natural, free market price for something. A tariff is you trying to force a big beach ball, that's the domestic price, under the water. Now, you can probably hold it there for a little while, sure, but the market's natural pressure is just immense. Eventually, that ball is going to slip, and when it does, it doesn't just gently bob to the surface, it launches out of the water, right? Soaking everybody. And that huge, violent surge, that's inflation.
So what you've got here is a tool with two totally different faces. On the one hand, it can be a protective shield, this last-ditch effort to save a beloved industry from going extinct. Or it can be a boomerang, something you throw that comes flying right back to smash the very economy it was supposed to protect. To really see what I mean, we're going to look at two legendary, and I mean legendary, real-world examples.
First up, the shield. This is the absolute gold standard, the textbook example of a tariff that worked perfectly. We're talking about the incredible rescue of a true American icon. You have to understand, in the early 1980s, Harley-Davidson was an absolute disaster. Their quality control was so bad that more than half the bikes coming off the assembly line failed their final inspection. Their engines leaked so much oil that owners had this running joke that the bikes weren't leaking, they were just marking their territory. All while companies like Honda and Kawasaki were just flooding the market with bikes that were cheaper, faster, and way more reliable. Harley was staring into the abyss.
So yeah, they were desperate. They went to the government for help. And the Reagan administration, which was famously all about free markets, actually agreed. In 1983, they slapped this huge, but temporary, tariff on big imported motorcycles. It started at a whopping 45% and then stepped down each year. And this is the crucial part. It wasn't a permanent wall. It was a temporary shield designed to give Harley just enough breathing room, 5 years, to get its act together.
And here's what's amazing. Harley didn't just sit back and relax behind that shield. No way. They completely transformed their company. They overhauled their manufacturing. They fixed their quality problems. They were so successful, in fact, that in 1987, a full year before the tariff was set to expire, their CEO went back to Washington and said this. They actually asked the government to take the tariff away. It's just the perfect case study. It worked exactly like it was supposed to.
Okay, so that's the dream scenario. Now, let's talk about the nightmare. We're going to pivot from the perfect success story to, well, the most infamous cautionary tale in economic history. A tariff so catastrophic, it helped make the Great Depression even greater.
It all started with a good idea, or at least it seemed like one, a bill to help out struggling American farmers. But as soon as that door cracked open, every lobbyist in D.C. sprinted through it, tacking on protections for their own pet industries. Get this, more than 1,000 of the country's best economists signed a letter, basically begging the president not to sign it, warning it would be an utter disaster. He signed it anyway, and the rest of the world immediately fired back.
And boom, this was the result. As every country started throwing up their own walls in retaliation, global trade didn't just slow down. It completely cratered. It fell by 2/3. Let that sink in. 2/3. The entire system just seized up.
And this wasn't some vague, abstract problem. The damage was laser-focused and brutal. When the U.S. put a tariff on Swiss watches, what do you think happened? Switzerland boycotted American products, and their watch exports to the U.S. fell by almost half, overnight.
And hey, remember those farmers? The ones this whole thing was supposed to protect? Well, this is what happened to American egg exports to Canada after Canada retaliated. It went from nearly 1 million dozen down to just 14,000. The market wasn't just hurt, it was gone, evaporated. That is the boomerang effect in action.
Okay, so we've seen the shield, we've seen the boomerang. But sometimes a tariff is neither of those things. Sometimes it's just plain absurd. And this next story about how a fight over frozen chicken led to a 60-year-old tax on trucks is maybe the best example ever. No, I'm not kidding. It all started back in the 60s with a trade dispute over American chicken being sold in Europe. In retaliation for a European tariff, the U.S. slapped a 25% tax on a few random things, including light pickup trucks. Most of those little retaliatory taxes faded away over time, but not the truck one. For some reason, it stuck around, protecting Detroit's truck market to this very day.
So this created this whole bizarre industry of what's called tariff engineering. To get around this massive 25% tax, Subaru did something brilliant. They imported their brat pickup trucks with these ridiculous rear-facing plastic seats just bolted into the truck bed. Why would they do that? Well, because a couple of useless plastic seats in the back magically turned it from a light truck into a passenger car in the eyes of the law. And passenger cars only had a 2.5% tariff. It's hilarious, and it shows the absurd lengths companies will go to get around these things.
All right, so that's the history lesson. But here's the thing. Today, we have a superpower they didn't have back then. We can actually calculate the exact cost of these policies. So now when a politician stands up and says, "We're doing this to save jobs," we can look at the numbers and ask a very simple, very powerful question. Okay, but at what price?
Just look at this. It's staggering. Back in 2009, tariffs on Chinese tires supposedly saved about 1,200 American jobs. Okay, but because of those tariffs, the price of tires went up for everybody, costing American consumers $1.1 billion. Do the math on that. It means we, the consumers, paid $900,000 to save one job that paid $40,000 a year.
And you might think, okay, that was a weird one-off. Nope, not at all. A few years ago, tariffs on imported washing machines created about 1,800 jobs here. But the price hikes cost consumers $1.5 billion a year, which works out to $815,000 for every single one of those new jobs.
But wait, it gets even weirder. And this part is wild. The tariffs were only on washing machines. But for some reason, the price of clothes dryers, which had no new tax on them at all, also jumped by 12%. Why on earth would that happen? Simple. They're usually sold as a matching pair, right? So the companies just raised the price on the dryers too. They knew they could get away with it, and we're the ones who paid for it.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? What's the big takeaway? It shows us that the debate over tariffs today, it's not really just about dollars and cents anymore. It's bigger than that. It's a fundamental clash between two completely different ways of seeing the world. In one corner, you have the idea of global efficiency. The argument is, hey, let every country do what it's best at, let's trade freely, and in the end, we all win with lower prices and more choices. But in the other corner, you have national sovereignty. And this argument says, hold on a second. A nation has to protect its most important industries for security reasons, and it needs to protect good jobs to keep society stable, even if that means things cost a little more.
And that right there gets us to the absolute core of why tariffs are so politically tricky. The benefits? They're concentrated, they're loud, and they are highly visible. You can send a news crew to the factory that stayed open, you can interview the happy workers, the politician gets to be a hero, but the costs, they are totally invisible. They're spread so thin across millions and millions of us, just a few extra bucks here, a few extra bucks there. Nobody ever holds a press conference about that. So you end up with this perfect political tool, right? The good stuff is right there on camera for everyone to see, while the bad stuff is completely hidden in the background. This makes them politically popular, but economically very, very dangerous. And that leaves us with the one single, all-important question we have to ask every single time we hear about a new tariff. Who really pays the price?
Thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment with any topic you'd like us to talk about in future videos, and don't forget to hit the like button.